Alright, what's up people, and welcome to a new Discog video today. We are ranking the albums of one of my favourite bands of all time, Slayer, also affectionately referred to as fucking Slayer, though usually that title is uttered much louder. Fucking Slayer! Fucking Slayer! Slayer has been one of my favourite bands for a very, very long time, and they are, in my opinion, the best of the big four and one of the best thrash bands ever. And today, we're ranking their albums from worst to best, from my personal least favourite to my personal favourite. So, we're not going to waste any more time, we're just going to get in and rank all of their albums. That being all 12 of them. I want to give a quick shout out to their EP Haunting the Chapel. Though I am not considering it in this list, I do want to give it an honourable mention because it is such a killer EP, but unfortunately due to the runtime of it being significantly shorter than all of their full lengths, I had to leave it off this list, though I do really, really love Haunting the Chapel. It is such a good EP, but at the number 12 spot, I should say, my personal least favourite, it shouldn't really be a surprise, it's Undisputed Attitude. I was considering leaving Undisputed Attitude off of this list entirely, mostly because it's just an album of punk covers, but it does have one original track on there, and you know what that is? It's one of the worst Slayer songs ever written, Gemini. I don't like Gemini. It is such a poo song. It doesn't even deserve the right to be known as the worst Slayer song of all time. It's just so boring and bland. And it being the only original Slayer song on this album of covers doesn't help either. They could have chosen anything else and it would have been better than Gemini, in my personal opinion. And that might be a hot take, it might not be, who knows, but I don't like Gemini. And I don't really enjoy this album that much. It's fun to go in and listen to a few cover songs on here, like Spiritual Law and Mr. Freeze are cool. Also, I like the I Hate You cover. That one's fun, to be honest. Richard Hung Himself is also a fun cover. I do definitely bop up and down listen to that one. But that's about it. That's where all my praises end for this album. It's just forgettable, and I wouldn't say it shouldn't have existed. It still has its place in the Slayer anthology, but it just doesn't stack up to anything above it, in my opinion. But there you go, number 12, Undisputed Attitude. Now on to number 11, we have Diabolus In Musica. This might be a surprise, it might not be. I don't hear much love for this album, and I don't think people hear much love from this album from me. But this album just kind of fell by the wayside for me. There aren't really many tracks on this album that I love too much. Also, it felt like they were down-tuning, which is a sign of Slayer trying to appeal to the nu metal movement that was going on at the time they were making this album, which isn't a good sign. Slayer's usually known for bucking trends and going for their ferocious sound, but in this album it felt like they were just going, shit, we need to get a new audience in, we're suffering right now. And it shows, I feel. Let's go through some of the songs I like though. I liked Bitter Peace, that's a really, really good song. Stain of Mind is a solid song as well. Also, Love to Hate is, ironically, despite the name, one of the best on this album, probably my personal favourite. Scrum is fun and chuggy as well, I like that one. And then Point is a very strong closer for the album, I will give it that. But besides that, the guitars on Death's Head just doesn't do anything for me, it just kind of irritates me a bit. Same with Overt Enemy, it just, there's nothing about it that I'm like, yeah, I don't know, I don't really like that one. Desire and In the Name of God are also not very good either. I don't really like those songs too much. There's just not that much on this album that I enjoy. Apologies if you do enjoy it, anyone watching, but it's not my cup of tea. But there you go, number 11, Diabolus In Musica. Now into the top 10. Divine Intervention comes in at number 10, and this one is a big step up from the number 11. Every album after this point in Slayer, everything from the 10 to 1 spot, I find enough of an enjoyment on there to find myself returning to the album. Divine Intervention is part of that pack, but it is the lowest of that pack, but there is some stuff that I really like from this album. Let's go through it. Sex Murder Art is a really cool song. Fictional Reality and Ditto Head are two fucking monsters of a song. They are just so good. I love those two. Circle of Beliefs is strong as well, I like that track. Serenity and Murder and Mind Control are two really, really strong songs as well. I really like those as well. But the album as a whole feels a bit unfocused in its tone, which might be why it falls to the bottom of the top 10. Killing Fields doesn't really work as the opening track for me personally. It's not the strongest. The title track doesn't really work for me either personally. I know some people like that song, but nah, I'll pass on that one. But yeah, it's a mixed bag, this album. There's a tiny bit more in this album that I like versus I don't like, which is why it comes in at number 10. Right, now moving on into number 9, we have Hell Awaits. Now, there are some people just gawking at their screen, like going, why is this one so low? I don't know. I feel like it's just there aren't many songs that are as memorable as in albums above this one. Let's go through the album. One thing I will say is this album sounds the most angry and fast-paced, and just the most heavy one they've done. Definitely one of the most heavy. Maybe not the most heavy, but of their early stuff, definitely is really good stuff. Hell Awaits and Kill Again are just so evil sounding. Those two are great. At Dawn They Sleep sounds slow and creepy. Praise of Death attacks your ears at just full pelt. Necrophiliac is fast and catchy as well. That one's quite an earworm. But I feel like it just trails off at the end with Hardening of the Arteries. I just feel like that one doesn't really work, I think. I think the album should have ended with Crypts of Eternity. I think that would have been a better closing track. I think my main criticism with this album is just it's a bit too short. I would have liked to have heard more from it, but can't have everything, I guess. Some people love this album, it's not hard to see why. It just didn't land very high for me personally. But it's still a great album. I still really, really enjoy it. Alright, at number 8 on the list we have World Painted Blood. Now, this one was the album that came out as I was getting into Slayer from a young age. So, me personally, I have a lot of emotional attachment to this one. I know that this one is not renowned as being one of their best, and I know it's not one of my favourite either anymore, but it used to be. It fell a little bit, especially when re-listening to their albums in order of release leading up to recording this video, you know, and making my ranking and stuff. This one, like I say, I didn't enjoy it as much as I remember enjoying it when I was younger. But it's still good, let's go through it. The title track has a creepy build into the album, that one really starts us off well. Unit 731 has just full pelt shredding and drums. That one is probably my favourite on the album. Snuff is a cool change of pace for the album as well. Hate Worldwide is fast paced in the bridge and rhythm, but then slows down for the chorus as well. That one's a really, really fun song. I like that one a lot. I always find myself headbanging to Americon as well. That one's a really good track. Psychopathy plays at full speed as well. That one's really great. Playing with Dolls was a mistake. The name was a mistake and the song was as well. You shouldn't name your song Playing with Dolls if your band name is Slayer. Just saying. And then Not of This God. This song saves the album. It ends it on a heart-thumping speed. Such a good closer for the album. It is a fun album now that I think about it, but it did land at 8. Sadly. Now moving on to number 7. Now if I didn't get people to dislike this video with Hell Awaits, I'll definitely get them to dislike it with this one. At number 7 we have Seasons in the Abyss. Now I know this one has a hardcore fan base behind it, and it's not hard to see why. I enjoyed the shit out of this album. I think the reason it landed a bit lower is because this is one of the albums that I discovered later of Slayer's discog, so I don't have the nostalgia factor to this one. War Ensemble is a great opener. Blood Red is bouncy and chuggy. Spirit in Black is also fast-paced. Hallowed Point, Temptation and Born in Fire are 3 iconic Slayer tracks as well. And then Skeletons of Society slows down to build a really creepy atmosphere for the album. That one's really good. And obviously Dead Skin Mask and the title track continue that atmosphere that plays throughout the album. This album is really, really strong on atmosphere and mood building and stuff. This one's a really, really fun listen as well. Everything from Seasons in the Abyss through to my number 1 are just no skip albums. Every album from this list going onwards are all no skip. But yeah, at number 6 we have God Hates Us All. This was a superb comeback album. This album is one of the best modern age thrash albums, especially from the big 4. Let's go through the tiny little bit of negatives before we move into the positives though. Feels a tiny bit too long. They definitely could have trimmed some of the fat somewhere in this album. Also, if you know me with albums and listening to them all the way through, I don't really enjoy intro tracks. So as you can tell, Darkness of Christ shouldn't have been on the album, or should have just been lumped on the front of Disciple, in my opinion. Speaking of Disciple, that song is pretty much Slayer's magnum opus of a song. It is one of the strongest thrash songs ever made. At one stage, if you asked me about this song, I would have said it was a bit overrated, but now I've come to my senses and realised This song is a banger. There's a reason why it's renowned as one of the best thrash songs ever made. Disciple is just a god tier song. It really is. So if you told me that Disciple was the main driving factor for Slayer making this album, then I wouldn't disagree with you, and I wouldn't hate it, and I would not be surprised. I will say God Send Death, Seven Faces and Defiance do slow down the pace of the album a bit too much for my liking. It would have been good if there was just only one or two of those tracks instead of just all three. Like I say, trimming the fat. New Faith, Warzone and Cast Down are three certified chuggathons. I love those three. Exile and Bloodline, they don't need any introduction. Those songs are also renowned as being great Slayer songs for a reason. And then Here Comes the Pain leading into Payback. That was the best decision to end this album on. Those two tracks close out this album perfectly, in my opinion. Now moving into number 5. People might be surprised that I ranked this one this high, but it is Show No Mercy. This album inspired Sodom. Case in point, it also inspired a bunch of black and thrash to come out later, like Witchery and Devastator, just to name a few. This album is paying tribute to their inspirations like Venom and Merciful Fate. Evil Has No Boundaries is the perfect opening track for this one. Antichrist is groovy and catchy as well. Die by the Sword, obviously, that one's a thrash classic. And then Fight Till Death sounds the closest to what Slayer would become in later albums. Metal Storm is iconic, Black Magic as well, and that one happens to be probably my favourite on the album personally. Cryonics is also fast and energised as well, and then the title track is just a multifaceted masterpiece of a song, and is a great closer for the album as well. Slayer usually nails their closers. They usually stick the landing with their albums, so yeah, there we go, number 5. Now moving into number 4, we have Repentless. Oh my god, I was so hyped when this album came out. This album is so good. I love this one. It's at number 4 because the title track is great. I love the title track so much. Also, Take Control and Vices managed to keep the energy that the song Repentless managed to capture at the start of the album. When the Stillness Comes is also really slow and creepy as well. Chasing Death and Implode are really exciting and aggressive songs as well. Piano Wire has a chuggy rhythm to it. And then Pride and Prejudice, I love that track, but I feel like the album should have closed with You Against You, personally. I think that would have been the stronger closer for Repentless. My only criticism, just like with God Hates Us All, I don't like opening tracks. Therefore, Dissolutions of the Saviour shouldn't have been on the album, or should have just been shoved on the front of Repentless probably. But maybe not, maybe Repentless is fine as it is. I don't know what to do with that. Maybe just get rid of the intro track maybe. But that's just me, maybe some people like the intro tracks. Anyway, right, now moving on to number 3, I bet people are surprised this one's this high, but it is Christ Illusion. If God Hates Us All is the comeback album that Slayer needed, then what does that make Christ Illusion? For me personally, Christ Illusion is the perfect modern Slayer album. It definitely recaptures the magic of what was so great about their old albums, whilst also bringing this new energy to it that wasn't there originally, personally. A few years ago, I wouldn't have batted an eyelid to this album, but after a few years and more recent times, I've started to warm up this album more and more to the point where now, like I say, it's my number 3. Flesh Storm is a devastatingly heavy opening for the album and leads perfectly into Catalyst. Black Parade is slow and deliberate, that one's so good. Eyes of the Insane is unsettling. Jihad obviously needs no introduction, everyone knows and loves Jihad, or at least if you haven't, you should. Catatonic is an angry monster of a song as well. Supremacist is fast and angry and is probably my favourite on the album, though I would have to think long and hard about that one. This is one of the heaviest Slayer albums for me personally, and if you haven't given this album much thought, maybe revisit it and you might be enlightened. Just praise all around for this one. This one's so good. But yeah, at my number 2, we have South of Heaven. For a little time, if you ask me what my favourite Slayer album was, I would say this one. Nowadays, I've come to my senses and realised what my number 1 is, which we'll get to after this, but South of Heaven is great. Let's go through why. No skippable song on this entire album, first of all. I think this album has the best atmosphere outside of Seasons in the Abyss. In fact, some might say that South of Heaven has a better atmosphere building than Seasons, but who knows? It's always up for debate, isn't it? The title track is slow and creepy. Silent Scream, Live Undead, and Behind the Crooked Cross are 3 Amazing tracks, dude. I love them. Mandatory Suicide has the slow, creepy tempo that was captured on the title track of the album. Ghosts of War and Read Between the Lies also, as songs, managed to recapture that violent, angry sound that Slayer was known for in albums previous, like Hell Awaits. Even the cover of Distant Aggressor is good. Not good, great, I should say. And then Spill the Blood. Great closer. Great album. So good. Nothing but just applause for making such an anthem of an album. It is so good. And then, if there was ever any doubt, my number one Slayer album is Raining Blood. This one's an iconic metal album for a reason. It's perfect, it's nostalgic, and every song on here is great. Angel of Death is the best opener, and like I'd say, needs no introduction. Piece by Piece is also angry and aggressive and just a fucking monster of a song. Necrophobic and Altar of Sacrifice are two absolute earworms. And then Jesus Saves goes from a very slow and deliberate pace to just breakneck speed. Postmortem has a bouncy, downtrodden tone to it. And then the song Raining Blood needs no introduction. It is so good. It is renowned as one of the best metal tracks for a reason. You hear this everywhere for a reason. People talk about it for a reason. And then Aggressive Perfecta is an explosive closer. Just really ends off this album with a bang. One of my favourite albums of all time. Don't think there's much that can contend with Raining Blood. It's a lot of people's favourite albums and it's not hard to see why. But there we go. That's it. I've done my Slayer ranking now. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys agree. Actually, I hope you guys don't agree. Leave in the comments what your album rankings are for Slayer and we can have a nice, polite and calm conversation about it. And like I've said, if my opinion differs from yours, don't get too upset. This is just one man's opinions. So, yeah. But yeah, with that all out of the way, I'm going to leave you with that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And yeah, I guess I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.